Hello, everyone. This is Hannah Musa, and this is my presentation for MPA 510 on the theorists of the 60s and 70s. So I want to talk about three readings that we had this week and how they relate to the various theories and concepts and principles we've talked about in the past in this class. To begin, I want to talk about the Katz and Kahn article, which is organizations and the system concept. So I want to talk about two main characteristics that they discuss for open systems that either relate or don't relate to Frederick Taylor and scientific management. So the first is differentiation, where they basically talk about how medical doctors are in their time specializing into specific types of medicine instead of being general practitioners. And knowing the doctors that are practicing or are about to practice that I know, they are specializing in specific types of medicine. So I think this is definitely something that's still accurate today. And then looking at equifinality, this is something I think that they would disagree with Frederick Taylor on versus specialization, which he was a big proponent of. Looking at equifinality, they talk about the ways in which things get done. In his case, Frederick Taylor wanted everything to be done in one specific way to achieve the same result. However, they talk about how that's not always the case, and you don't have to have everything done the same way to achieve the same result. So they would definitely disagree with him on that. And then looking at the Grodson's article, The American System, he talks about basically the concept of marble cake federalism. And I think one example that he gives which demonstrates this, which we can relate to, is federal grants. Looking at that, he talks about how, of course, the money is going to come mainly from the national government, the federal government, and there's standards that are set throughout the nation. But he also talks about how the state and local governments are also going to play a role in dispersing that grant money. So basically, you see that marble cake federalism because you can't have one part of the government doing its own thing. You have to have all three working together in order to administer those grants. And then looking at how we see that in the Constitution, I want to focus specifically on the three main branches of government and how they basically work together in process, specifically talking about impeachment, which is something we hear a lot about in the news right now. Talking about that, you see in the Constitution in section 2 and 3 of Article 1, they talk about mainly the legislative branch, but you also see, of course, the two other branches playing a role, basically working together in order to get that process. It needs to start basically in the House of Representatives and then go to the Senate, and if they see reason to impeach, then they would then try the president, where the Chief Justice on the Supreme Court would then be presiding over the trial. So basically, they all work together in order to make that process work. And then continuing on to the life cycle of bureaus, that's by Anthony Downs, who talks about the different ways in which bureaucracies are created. And he talks about specifically two types of people that would dominate those bureaucracies, which are climbers and conservers. And climbers is in relation to Max Weber. Both talk about, in their writings, a climber would be someone who is maybe an elected official or someone aspiring to be an elected official who wants to keep seeking promotion at any opportunity they get. And then a conserver is someone who's basically going to try and do the opposite of that because they're afraid, especially in a growing organization, of of the uncertainty that it brings. And in this case, maybe losing your job, which I can definitely relate to working for the county, especially working under an elected official. You don't have that certainty of keeping your job because you don't know how long they're going to stay in their position or the different uncertainties there. And then I definitely agree, I think, with all three articles, but I think this is the one that definitely stood out to me the most, especially when you look at the concept or the characteristic of equifinality. I think that relates to what stood out to me the most was types of learning, because a person who is doing something the exact same way as someone else in order to achieve a certain result, they may struggle because they learn differently. So I think this is the one that stood out to me the most because I might learn different from someone else. I'm more hands on in certain situations, or visual or auditory in other situations. So it kind of depends. So a person who is doing something a certain way that they maybe don't learn in or something like that, they might have a harder time doing that. So I think this is something that should definitely stay, the concept of equifinality. So I think it's really important that we have that. Okay, so these are my references, and I have the link to the Frederick Taylor video up there. And that's it. So thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend. Okay, bye.